Welcome back to another episode of the Reset Mantra. I'm your host, Sabina Maharzan. This podcast aims to share inspiring insights to help you reset your mind, body, and soul so you can live in alignment with your true self. I'm very excited about today's episode. My guest today is Bida Pokhrel. Bida is a board-certified mindset coach who helps ambitious human beings understand their emotions, set boundaries, and communicate with clarity and confidence through inner child healing. So without further ado, please welcome Bida Pokhrel. Bida, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, so let's get started, shall we? So in today's episode, I know we talked about many things offline, but we're going to be focusing around inner child healing. And I'll be honest, like I was telling you off camera, I'm fairly new to the concept of inner child. I'm a little nervous as well. Because I want to be mindful and respectful of this topic. When I first came across this topic, I think it was probably last year, and I was a little bit skeptical, I'll be honest, and I thought it sounded a bit woo-woo. However, I began to experiment with myself regarding some of the concepts that I learned within inner child healing, and it actually showed positive result within myself in terms of the way that my behavior patterns were and how I was responding to certain situations. So that's how it's been a topic of interest and something that I've been exploring since. I'm excited to dive deeper in today's episode around, your experience of first how you got into the area of mindset coach and, your take on inner child healing. Can you share a little bit first about your background and how you got into the field of mindset coach?
Yeah, so like most people, I was chasing society's idea of success. And I feel like at one point I started to feel a little bit disconnected with my true authentic self. I remember like sharing with my friends, oh, I used to make art, I used to sing and dance, and I don't do any of those things anymore. So I felt like my creativity was slowly dying, and with my hobbies, I was losing myself too. So back in 2020, I actually started diving really deep into my own journey of self discovery.
Hmm.
And I actually started unknowingly with healing my inner child because I started creating art again,
Hmm.
started singing and dancing. And at that point, I wasn't like taking any voice lessons or like, I'm not a professional at any of those fields, but just doing it for fun because it brought so much joy to me. And I started being a little bit more mindful using mindfulness practices, different modalities. Um, and that really helped me to transform my mindset and
Hmm.
my own understanding of my emotions and what it truly means to be me. So my own journey kind of led me to become a mindset coach so that I could help other people with their vision of who they are, who they're wanting to be, but then at the same time experiencing some type of block, maybe feeling disconnected, and being held back by their limiting beliefs. So just to help them turn their vision into reality, um, I became a mindset coach.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I loved how you shared and talked about how you experienced, certain disconnect within your own life, and then you started in this journey of self-discovery and exploring and experimenting with your own minds. Now you are, helping other people overcome the same limited beliefs or patterns that you've experienced in your own life and trying to help them as well. So I think that's wonderful. One of the areas that you specialize is in facilitating the inner child healing. And that's what I would like to kind of highlight in today's episode. So like I was saying before, when I first heard of the concept inner child healing about a year ago, I thought it was kind of woo woo, and I was very skeptical about it. And, in today's day and world, what does the term healing mean? What's inner child healing? It could be very specific and personal to everyone, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about, what inner child is and what does it
Yeah.
mean?
So, inner child is essentially a concept in psychology and personal development, basically representing the subconscious part of our mind that is childlike.
Mm.
And this part holds our childhood experiences, emotions, memories, past wounds, limiting beliefs. And because our emotional development begins even before birth, working on your inner child means like healing your inner child, basically means dealing with any hurt or wounds or shame, whatever you experienced in your childhood. And so that helps us heal our past, because if we don't heal our past, then that could sabotage us in our adulthood, right? Like whatever it is that we're trying to create in our life. So, like you said, like, repeating the same patterns as adult, that's what we do when our inner child shows up. We repeat the same patterns from childhood. For example, maybe somebody grew up in a very strict household with like critical parents, and as adult they may attract someone who's also critical, or even they may show signs of being strict with their partner, and of course that creates friction in their relationship, right? So that's how the inner child shows up. And another thing too is when you have a lot of repressed emotions from the past, because our parents at that time, our caretakers at that time, didn't have all the privilege that we do now of social media and learning from online. So they didn't know how to properly process their emotions. So most of us have been taught to like repress our emotions from the past. So when you do that, eventually you're no longer going to be at ease in your body. So when you start experiencing that, that means you have disease. And that's how you have random pains in your body. You may have hormonal issues, or even like autoimmune diseases. So this happens because we're holding so much emotions, past hurt, that it creates stress in our body, to the point where it starts manifesting physically. And for your mental well being, for your emotional well being, your physical well being, healing your child is just super, super important.
It could be a very deep conversation on this one, right? So
Yeah.
it's the concept of inner child. The way that I see from what I heard is, although we have grown up now, we still have that inner child-like personality inside us. Sometimes it may be like the kind of love and attention we seek, or respond to certain events that may have formed in the early childhood, right? In terms
Yeah.
of how our relationship with our parents was, or how they treated us, how their communication with us was, how the environment was. And this is nothing about complaining about the kind of childhood we had. Our parents were only doing the best they could, or they were only doing what their parents did, or maybe just the opposite of what their parents did. But
Right.
now that we're adult, it's our responsibility to sort of identify and heal our inner child, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's kind of having negative impacts. And you touched on the relationship, like be it romantic or friendship, the way we kind of respond to our partners. What could be some of the examples, right? Like let's say if someone has an unhealed inner child, it could be in a romantic relationship, it could be in a friendship or at workplace, right? What could be, in your experience, some of the examples that could be a sign of this person has unhealed inner child?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are mainly two ways that inner child shows up in our workplace, or pretty much in our life, in our relationships. Um, either your inner child acts in or acts out. So when you act in, you could isolate yourself in a room, or like, act like somebody doesn't exist, like whoever you are angry with, like you don't talk to them, you stonewall them, and
Oh,
you ignore them. And acting out may look like yelling, screaming, hitting,
like showing
or,
tantrums.
exactly.
Mm.
So both ways are your inner child is showing tantrum, like you isolating yourself, or you're suppressing and reacting. It's both your inner child. So if you're not responding um, in a proper, clear way, then your inner child is probably taking over the situation.
Now that makes sense. I think like I probably have been one some time ago in
We all
past.
have been there. We have all been there.
Yeah, it's just a matter of recognizing, right, that
Exactly.
the inner child is showing up.
Of course, we all have these inner child wounds, right? Until we actually take the time to understand and nurture our inner child. So I did experience, I had a big fear of being seen.
Mm,
And I could not really, I never liked being seen on social media. I never really posted much. And even this podcast I would not be here if I did not have healed my inner child. So yeah, it has shown in many different ways, and that's just one example of fear of being seen. There was a situation in my childhood where I was shamed for doing something, or being my bold self. Whatever the case may be, it shows in our adulthood in many different ways. And I can actually give you another example of how I self-sabotaged when I had not healed my inner child. So when I worked retail for a really long time. And in the beginning, it was back in like 2013 or 14, a really long time ago, I was a salesperson. How I am as a person is that I give my 110% to like any job that I do. So even as a salesperson, I was literally working as a personal stylist. I was going above and beyond for my clients, and I actually won an award for as it was called All Star. It's like one of the most prestigious award given to an
mm,
employee at that time at my company. And I was offered a position to be a personal stylist, but because I did not want to be seen and I did not want to deal with a lot of people, um, I actually chose a desk job instead, to be in customer service. So, of course, being a personal stylist would have greatly helped me with like financially, and even with personal development. Like it would have helped me in many different ways. But I chose to be comfortable and hide behind the desk. And
mm,
that was because I did not heal my inner child, who did not want to be seen and who did not want to deal with people, and who did not want to step out of her comfort zone. So now that I understand inner child, and now that I've healed inner child, I can take that steering wheel back from her, and I can just tell my inner child to stay back and relax, and and I got this, so I can show up as my true authentic self as I am now. So when I heal my inner child, I'm able to break free from any past issues, any past wounds, and grow in a really positive way towards my future.
mm. Wow, that's a very inspiring story of, how you were able to overcome and heal your inner child and show up as your best self. I appreciate you sharing that. I think we all probably have at times gone through some sort of, I know you talked about your fear of being seen. And for me, I think I had similar struggle for most part of my 20s when I had a lot of self doubt. And
Right.
I speak a lot about it because I feel that it's something that a lot of women around the globe, not just us as Nepalese or Asians, a lot of people around the globe struggle with, I believe. And when I was a kid, I think I was a pretty loud, a rule breaker kind of kid. So I always got the comments of, you're too loud and you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. So somehow I started to believe that, okay, being bold, being very outspoken in public area, in front of people isn't an ideal rule for us, especially as girls and women, right? So I think I kind of grew up to be this person who wouldn't speak up. In other
Mm.
words, who wouldn't stand up for themselves, right? If I knew something that I was being mistreated or I was at a disadvantage at a workplace or at a friendship or personal relationships, I wouldn't speak up. But then it kind
Right.
of developed this resentment inside me. And like you said, earlier, when we suppress these emotions, it kind of the body gives you a signal, right, in the long
Right.
term. So I was having a lot of resentment and anger, but I knew that I need to speak up, speak my truth, and be my authentic self. But something was stopping, and I don't know
Mm.
what that was. So that's where the concept of, okay, inner child, where did this behavior pattern or this emotional blueprint, if I may say, right? Who was telling me that you shouldn't stand up for yourself, just follow
Mm.
along or uh, receive what you get. Don't ask for
Right.
what you want. Don't
Yeah.
put your needs first, right? It may
Yeah.
sound something like that. Can you tell us a little bit about, so let's say when someone identifies, okay, there's certain behavior pattern, be it the fear of being seen or be it the fear of being abandoned, shows up as an adult. Once someone identifies that, how would they go about healing their inner child? What does the process look like?
Yeah. So most of the time when we start healing our inner child, well, I started by, journaling, creating art and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I hired a coach
Mhm.
and had someone else help me, guide me through my inner child healing, I realized there were so many deeper traumas and wounds that I had within me from my childhood. And it didn't have to be, and I realized that it didn't have to be a big thing, like, a big deal to others, as long as it was what you felt. Because your emotions, your feelings are valid. It doesn't matter what happened to you, what you felt at that time in that situation is what creates those wounds, right? So it wasn't until I worked with a coach I was able to dive so much deeper and find out all of these things that were holding me back, like this fear of being seen, like where did it really come from? So we were able to dive into the root cause of all of my limiting beliefs, all of my wounds. And I was able to take wisdom out of the wounds and then apply that towards my life. So this work is a really deep work. So I would say if somebody wants to work with me in healing their inner child, then at first I would send them some, like an intake form so that I know a little bit of their background. And then based on that, we will dive a little bit deeper. Of course, like creating safety is one of the most important part in any transformation, any healing journey. So that's something that I prioritize the most, creating safety and trust. And so after that, we dive into the childhood story. Like, what story are you telling yourself? Where did that story come from? And slowly we take it a little bit further and dive a little bit deeper to find the root cause of the situation and where it has shown in our life. What patterns are we repeating again and again? So eventually we are able to let go of the past. We're able to um, improve our emotional well-being, our mental well-being through inner child healing, because this work is a really profound work that helps you to be free of all the chains that are like holding you back in being your true most authentic self. It's kind of like peeling back the layers of onion. Like, think of yourself as an onion, and then all of those layers are something that you're not. Like, maybe it's an opinion that you got from someone, and then it's like shedding all of those layers, and in the end your pure soul essence of your true authentic self. So that's the work that is inner child healing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a sensitive process, and every human being has their own personal journey of how their story of how their childhood was. And if I take my own example, when I was a kid, I wanted my father to be present in all of my school functions. But my mom
Mm.
was always there, my sister was always there, my brother always showed up, but I needed my dad to be there. and and he was working 7 days a week. He had
Mm.
to support three kids, so he was working full time, but then he was also doing his side projects. So he was always working, traveling. But then there are definitely a lot of days when he's really fully present for family and kids. But this specific time when I wanted him to be in my school functions, like when the annual functions, when I would be like dancing, singing, and
Yeah.
speaking, and I want to show my dad like I did good, or
Parents'
just
Day.
Parents' Day. You're right, and he wouldn't be there. So I always thought that, okay, maybe I haven't done something good in my life to
Mm.
get this validation from my dad, right?
Mm.
I mean, at home, he would always be this, okay, you're doing really good, your English is good, you're smart, and you're confident, you can do it. Everything was perfect, but this specific Parents' Day function, which is once a year, and I wanted him to be there, he wouldn't be there. So I think that kind of made me feel that um, in my mind as a kid, I made the story
Mm.
that my father wasn't there for me, when in reality it's not true at all. But that was a child me telling that story to
Yeah.
myself. So
Right.
when I was doing this inner child healing last year, I came to uncover these layers, like you were saying exactly. It took me a whole year to figure this out.
Right. Right.
And I started to look deeper into it. And then I felt so guilty and so ashamed of myself, that why I've been telling this story. So I called my dad and told him about this whole thing, what I felt. I probably never had shared about this to anyone. My dad, he got married right after high school at the age of 16. He had to give up college to raise the kids. And I don't know, in his 20s, 30s, he probably, and my mom as well, they probably wanted to enjoy life and do a lot of things for themselves. But they sacrificed everything and worked hard, be it in sun or rain, 7 days a week, traveling. And it must have been so hard for him to live that life and not be there for kids. And I think I didn't understand what he was going through, and I only chose to think about myself, right? And as a kid, we're never able to understand emotions. That's what kids are. But I think as an adult, now that I realize how much difficult and hardships he has experienced, and I had this whole story about this one tiny thing. I sort of talked to him about all this thing, and I told him that I really, really loved him, and how much, even more special, his place is in my heart. And I think it was a good time. That that conversation kind of brought us even more closer. Our emotional bond became stronger, is what I believe. Like you said in the beginning, a tiny act of working on yourself, working on your inner child, working on your inner self could have a ripple effect in all areas of your life. But for others, it could be deeper than this, right?
Yeah,
Um,
so that's what I meant by, like, it doesn't have to be a big deal to others as long as it is a big deal to you. So if you compare your wounds with other people's wounds, there's always going to be a bigger wound or a smaller wound. So that's not something that we do because this work is about self development of your story, your narrative. Where have you been wounded? That's what matters. And I'm sure like every single one of us in this planet Earth have been wounded one way or another, and some a lot more than others.
mhm.
But this is not something to, minimize somebody who has gone through so much worse situation, but to
Yeah.
say that every single thing that you have been through is also valid.
Mhm.
Just because you have seen it worse doesn't mean you need to invalidate your own experience.
Tell me about this. So what happens? There might be many people right, in their adulthood who may not agree. Like I was very skeptical about the term of inner child healing when I first heard of it, but there might be
Yeah.
many people who are maybe unaware, maybe they don't believe in it, or maybe
Hmm.
it doesn't work for them, right? So can you tell us, like from your experience, what happens if someone doesn't identify or um, resolve their inner child?
So that's a really good question. If you don't heal your inner child at all, then, the same patterns, the same behaviors, the same self-sabotaging patterns will keep coming up. And that's the thing with healing your inner child. It's not just to connect you with your true self, but it also helps you to overcome these patterns and behaviors. And when you do that, it not only improves your emotional and mental well being, but it also improves your relationships around you. And it creates a ripple effect where it not only helps you and your family, but the whole world. You're making an impact in this world. And so when you are at ease in your body, then you're leading a happier, more fulfilling life. So you don't feel the need to go and attack someone else, or, like bring somebody else down. So when you are empowered, when you have understood and cared and nurtured your inner child, you can, like I said earlier, break free from your past issues and stop bringing those old patterns and collectively grow in a more conscious, positive way.
So it sounds like the early childhood experiences that we had with people who raised us, or could be our surrounding that spent we spent our time during childhood. This could affect all the future relationships.
Yeah, definitely shows up in relationship in different ways where it doesn't help with your growth, because the whole point of being in a relationship, unlikely to what society says, is to be married and you're done, right? Like, that's not it. Like, marriage is also work, and when you are in a relationship someone, that means you are helping each other grow. So
Mhm.
if you are with the right partner, then this partner actually helps you to bring the most authentic version of you, and you are growing together. You're growing together and you are helping each other to evolve. And that's what happens when you have both healed your inner child, and you're showing up as your adult selves. But at the same time, it's not that, just because you have done the inner child work, you never encounter any problems. It's just that when you do the inner child work, you start creating safety and self-trust within yourself to also show up and have responsibility in taking care of whatever life throws at you. You're
Mhm.
not scared of the obstacles. Together, you actually get through the obstacles.
From a little bit of what I know, the safety and self trust always comes in when we talk about inner child, because as a child and as an adult as well, we all need to feel that safety, right? That self
Yes, yes,
trust, and act from
definitely.
a place of being safe. There's definitely more than this. I would definitely love to explore more on this topic. The more that I know, it seems like, Vida, that there's more to it.
Right. I feel that way too. It's never
Yeah.
enough.
So this is something that I've started to do from this episode, and Vida, you're the first guest that I am starting this section with, which
Oh,
is two
okay.
questions at the end of the show. So are you ready for that?
Yeah. Bring it
Okay.
on.
All right. So tell me about what's one practice or habit that's been essential in helping you stay aligned with your true self.
One practice or habit, I would say meditating every morning, definitely, because it has helped me to set the tone for the day and really decide how I want to show up every day. And that way I'm able to take inspired action, and that helps me to align with my true self, because every morning when I meditate, I know what it means to be my true self, right? So it really helps me to set the tone for the day. So
Mm,
yeah,
oh, I
yeah,
love it.
that's the practice, I would say.
Oh, for sure. So looks like that's another area where you and I have similarity on meditation.
Oh, we have a
Yeah.
lot of similarities.
Oh my God. Yes, I think for me, I totally agree. For me as well, meditation definitely has been something that helped me stay connected to my core, like that center.
Yeah,
And how you know meditation is effective is you should have a day without meditation, and that's when you will know how important it is.
exactly. Yeah, I cannot go a day without meditating.
Mm. And today happens to be International Yoga Day, actually.
Oh,
June
wow.
21st.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, by the time we're airing the episode, it's going to be a different date, but
Yeah.
okay. So, next question. If you could share one piece of advice to help someone reset their life and find their inner compass, what would that be?
I would say prioritize self-reflection and really align your actions with your values. Because
Mm,
when you understand who you are at your core and what truly matters to you, I think is that is the foundation to like reset your life and find your inner compass.
mm. Wow, I love it. So aligning actions with your values, I think, which is quite
Yeah.
challenging, right? It's laying out actions of what we want to do and what our values are. It's a simple, straightforward
Yeah.
steps.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
It's yes, absolutely. And then aligning our actions, I think that part's the tricky one, which I'm still working
Right,
on.
right. And
Okay.
that's where I come in to guide you.
Yes. And I cannot emphasize this, the role of a coach in our life. We all need a coach, a mentor, who can
Right.
help us stay accountable and sort of really guide us to stay in track and help us achieve that goal. I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so great. Thank you so much, Vida. I really appreciate you spending time. And before we go, can you tell us where our listeners can find you?
Yeah, so I'm very much active on Instagram. They can find me at The Lost Hobbies. And those of you who don't have Instagram, you can find me on my email, thelosthobbies@gmail.com. And I will be more than happy to connect. And if anybody needs any help in any way, I'd be more than happy to help.
Lovely. And so I'm going to put those links in the show notes below so people can find out more about you and what you do because there are more to this. So your Instagram handle says The Lost Hobbies. I'm
Mhm.
curious, how did you come up with that name and what does that mean?
Yeah, so I actually started my Instagram back in 2020, and that was also when I started deeply um, diving into my own self-development journey. So I think in the beginning I shared with you that I felt that I lost my hobbies, and then I also felt like I lost myself in the process of being successful, like, trying to achieve everything. When I started that page, I was thinking of a name and I'm like, this is going to be the page for my hobbies. And,
Mm,
and, and when I look back, I know, like, I had that inner knowing of like finding myself one day. So that's how the name started. Like, as I started healing my inner child with the Instagram page, I started sharing my art. Um, and yeah, it's still called The Lost Hobbies, and that's connected to my program that I recently launched in March, Limitless Living.
mm,
So I feel like I went from losing my hobbies to now living limitlessly. And
mm.
yeah, so that's the concept
Oh,
behind the name.
I like how you kind of went back into re-finding or rediscovering your hobbies, the hobbies that you've lost, and sort of coming back so strong with this brand new, course called Limitless Living. So for all of you listening out there who would like to understand their emotions and set boundaries and, work on your inner child healing or other areas of self-development, you should definitely check out Vida's course. I'm going to put that link on the show notes below as well for those of you interested. Thank you so much again, Vida. I had a wonderful time talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you more.
Thank you for joining me this week on the Reset Mantra. I am Sabina Maharjan. Join me again next week, and in the meantime, please subscribe and leave me a review. If you have someone who you think will be great on the show, please get in touch and find me and the podcast on Instagram at I am Sabina Maharjan and at the Reset Mantra. I'm so looking forward to next week, and I'll catch you then.